Hey, hey everybody, how you doing? It's Wednesday and I'm back here again. We are going to talk about this infamous co-parenting. This is a very important topic to me. It has been, obviously, I don't know, I guess it's just always remained something that's important to me. Now that I pretty much co-parent. I have co-parenting relationships, but more of a co-parenting and partner and friend with one co-parent. And the fact of the matter is that as we, procreate in this life and get married and have relationships, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't, it is quite possible that we will be in positions where we will have to have a healthy co-parenting relationship with the other partner. And so I can tell you that from my experience, I am not telling you anything today that I have not had to do myself. And I want you to know that it is incredibly challenging, depending on how high conflict the disagreements or the relationship was. But I can tell you it is not impossible to have a very successful co-parenting experience with the other parent, and the other partner. And it's not only possible, but what it does allow is for children to flourish in the best way possible. So you want them to be well-rounded. We want them to be healthy. We want them to be psychologically and socially developed well. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I hope you join me. And I'm really going to scratch the surface of it. I think that it's important that at some point that I go into further detail on some practical things that we can learn and that we can do, and things that I can tell you for a 100% fact that I have done, and it has not been easy for me. There has been times where I was probably not my best, but I did learn from it, and I think that I'm here to offer the information and definitely not judge or condemn, because obviously it's something that doesn't come with a handbook per se, but there are handbooks out there. And even the most adjusted, or somebody who with well intentions, can fall into really giving conflict the focal point and not the children. So, basically that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So hopefully you'll engage with me in some capacity. So let's just get to the fact that the obvious. The obvious is that we are going to have conflict. We're going to have conflict, and I don't think it's important to recognize that the conflict will take place between parents and or co-parents or caretakers of the children, and that it's not something that we gotta completely avoid, because it's a natural part of life. We're going to argue, we're going to disagree, we're going to have conflict. What we want to do is get into the practice of how and what that looks like, particularly when we have children involved, and in situations where the homes are now separate or divorced. And the way in which we approach the conflict, the conversations that we have with one another, or the conversations that we continue to have afterwards, is going to make a huge difference on how the children view the other parent, how they view relationships, how they view resolving conflict, and how they adjust in their relationships in their future. Okay, it absolutely does. I think I've said this before, and I don't know if you know this. I am a product of a very healthy co-parenting situation between my mother and my father's wife, and I think that they did a pretty good job, specifically in the way that they handled working together with us, and it being a very, seamless kind of process, and that we knew that there was not any contentious beef or things like that. It's amazing to me. And now I know there's a lot of nuance. I know there's a lot of context that I'm probably not going to be able to get into in this video. And maybe we'll come back and touch on it. You just let me know. But I think it's important that we really have this conversation, because we know, if we don't know, or if we haven't been, I have been a part of a co-parenting situation that is high conflict and very difficult to navigate, or maybe you're in one now, maybe you know somebody who has. Let's just kind of walk through, some of those things together today. So, how parents get along will also play a big part in their well-being. And like I mentioned, socially, the way they develop, behavior, emotional is huge. Emotional is huge. And one of the things that I identified in research is that it's a little bit more common that, young girls, young children, like girls, that when they're in situations where there's an unhealthy and high conflict co-parenting situation, they usually have more of an emotional reaction and internalization, whereas boys you see behavior changes and things like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's more external in the way that they behave. So that's just something to think about. And maybe if you are starting to see those things, if that's going on, then be cognizant that, maybe there needs to be, a meeting of the minds in some way. And let me just tell you this. I'm not telling you, once again, anything that I have not done. Me and one of my co-parents have not spoken in 11 years. 11. And you say to yourself, how is it that you all co-parent? Well, we do the very best that we can to make sure that our daughter is the focal point. And we use tools in which we can communicate in a way that sends the message, and it's clear, it's concise. And so we function in that way, and that works best for our situation. And perhaps maybe there are situations with you and a co-parenting partner where that may be the case, and that's something you can look into because it's available, right? But it is available. If you have the opportunity where you can engage in a way with your co-parent, that would be best, and hopefully it's not high conflict. Okay. So one of the things I want to ask you. Sometimes we think that children aren't receptive to, well, let me not say receptive. They don't perceive the conflict, even if we do it in private. But children are very observant and astute to things that are not said, just as much as the things that they can physically see. Okay, so where there are times where we may believe that we're hiding some of that, we're not doing that good of a job, and it's and that's just part of being human. So that's something to think about. So I want to ask you: have you ever considered, like, if the child is dealing with the grief and the hurt about it, because we are dealing with it in our own way, and in some cases we're like, well, I don't just care as long as the kid's okay. But when we deal with the other parent, we deal with them in a way where we're dealing with them personally and not and more engaged in the conflict than we are in what actually needs to take place so that decisions can be made. Have you ever considered that they watched both of the parents be tremendously impacted or hurt by the separation or the divorce? Have we considered that they feel like they lost their family? Maybe they have experienced some deep pain about not being able to have direct access to both parents like they used to. And so that's something that they have to deal with and grieve through. I know in some cases where the children feel that they've lost the dream of always being there with their parents and them being together, so much so that even after they split for a time, they're hoping that the parents get back together. I think I know for a fact that I did when my parents separated. I really was like, hey, so we can't work this out in about a year, because that's how we, young people, young children will think through that logically. As adults, we know, that it most likely, if it's over, it's over, especially if the divorce is done. But just seriously, these are the things that when we're in our grief and our pain, we may overlook, what it is that the kids are experiencing, and also just the loss of innocence. Because sometimes with the home being separate and, the other children have to step up and take up some of the responsibilities that maybe the other parent did, now that they have to co-parent, right? So that's just something to think about. And so they lose not just their innocence, but they're fundamentally just being able to be free and conduct themselves as a child does, and not necessarily in different, more mature, more grown-up ways. So just something to think about. Let's see here. Let's talk about some of the types of conflict, right? So decision making, basic decision making. Have you ever experienced an incident where just the minimalist of a decision is like World War III? You know what I mean? Like, we already know we're gonna have to do this. So just some basic decision making can sometimes cause an argument that's very trivial, right? And to me, I equate the basic decision making as one of those things where it's, especially if they're high conflict and we are completely focused on the conflict and not actually getting a resolution for this particular decision making that needs to take place. The child is over there drowning in a lake, and we are sitting there arguing about whose fault the child is drowning while they continue to drown. And then we continue to argue about how we're going to get out there and save the child. You see what I'm saying? Like that kind of stuff taking place while the child suffers emotionally and all kinds of other things, right? And then decision making or conflicts about basic core values and beliefs. Meaning like your values and how you raise right from wrong. We teach them honesty, respect, integrity, how to love their neighbor, how to have empathy and compassion, and things like that. Just basic values, not to fight and things like that. So I'll give you an incident with my co-parent and my youngest. At one point, when I first got home and I got to get a parenting visitation at first, and then I got my rights were never terminated, and then I was co-parenting in a way where she was sharing both at the time between the both of us, and she would have this thing where she would hit whenever she didn't like something, just hit people. And I know that that's something that is more than likely learned either through something that's allowed at the home or maybe even in daycare. And so that was something that I had to really redirect and then redirect it fast, because I didn't want her to believe that that's the way you do things, for one, and that's wrong. And so that I know was not necessarily maybe a focal point initially at first in her other environment, but and it's difficult because in one environment where it's okay to do something, and in another environment where they're being reprimanded for it, could be difficult for the child. But we were able to really, through reinforcing you use your words and not your hands, and because I never spanked her to stop her from doing it, because to me that's kind of backwards. So that is the way where we work with her. And also, how would you feel? So sometimes we just be like, okay, well, you won't have your older brother or sister to hit you. You know what I mean? So it was just a working there, but we were able to get it done. But that's just an example. Exchanging of information, doctor's appointments, schedules, things that's going on with them personally in school, things like that. You got to talk about those things, because it's the responsibility of both parents. Some parents get really hung up in that, and some parents go out of their way not to share that information. Parent alienation. That's probably the most detrimental, because what I hear a lot of is isolating the child from the other parent. And the child absolutely needs and deserves both parents. And unless there is extreme instances of abuse or very, to that level in the other parent's home, then we have to trust and know that that parent loves that child. Now, if you, for whatever reason, have, the parent is like, I ain't loving that child, hell with it. Listen, this ain't for you. you're gonna have to make that decision and and do what you need to do. But if that is not the case, then we have to understand that by alienating the other parent, by doing things like overtly or subtly, like making comments, calling names, being condescending. Listen, I am not judging you. I've seen it. I have at one point had to work on it. It is 10 times better now. I'm pretty much a pro. And I have help, but I also have support, and I have people who I can talk to who've been through it and knows exactly how to make sure I focus on the issue and not the conflict, the focal point of the resolution. But those things do, negatively impact the kids. Or I've seen in alienation is like if the child comes to you and they're upset about something the parent did over there, and you engage and be like, yeah, they shouldn't have did that. Oh, I can't believe they did that. And you support them in their anger. That also is a part of alienation. There's a way to handle that in which you can still support that there may have been, maybe they didn't understand something. Maybe, we need to talk through that. I can talk to them about that, but I know they didn't mean to, I'm pretty sure they didn't mean to blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, you have to do it, because if you talk about the other parent, essentially you're creating a divide and you're talking about the child. Like, I don't engage. We can't engage. Let's say we cannot engage in talking about the other child, the other parent to the child. All that does is tear the child down. There's no in between on that. When you talk about negatively the other parent to that child, it is tearing that child down, because they are one part you and one part the other parent. So just basic organizing of lives, those type of things, money and child support. That's a hot topic. Now, you probably was like, I'll wait for her to get to that because they not taking care. Listen, I'm going to tell you this. I absolutely know that is a strong point for a lot of people. Have heard tons and tons of conversations, seen lots and lots of topics on Facebook about it. And let me just tell you, like I said before, under no circumstances should the child be deprived from being a part of the other parent's life. All it does is harm the child. I am with great hopes that the other parent can get it together and not require that the other parent be so understanding in knowing that they don't do their part, because that's unacceptable as well. And then, unfortunately, we end up putting the courts in our business. Now, for me, it was very important that I did not bring the courts, the state, into my financial business of either one of the parents. We do not do child support, nor have I ever. Everything gets taken care of. I'm grateful for that. I know that there's people who don't necessarily have those situations. And so we have a situation where not only are they not getting the financial or adequate financial support that the other parent should absolutely be responsible for, is accountable for, they are also being pulled away from the other parent in a way so that is very difficult for the child. If in fact you wanted the people to say, well, hey, that's just what it is, that's what they get. Let me ask you this. In the event that your child grows and is an adult and has their own child and falls on hard times or whatever the case may be and is not able to do it, as the grandparent, would you co-sign and say, oh, well, I guess you ain't gonna be able to see your grandchild? Would you say, let me help you be able to get a job? This is what you need to do. Would you take that stance to make sure that your child isn't hurting from not being able to see their child and therefore your grandchild? So these things have a way of coming back. I ain't wishing it, but it's just like one of those things where we don't have empathy. It shows up in a way. And it's not necessarily so much empathy as much as it's just like the right thing to do, because the child doesn't necessarily at some point really care too much about the money. I know they want the J's and the game. I get it. but it's really about the quality time. They need to know that they matter. They need to be hugged by their parent. They need to be looked at and smiled by their parent. That stuff goes a far way once they outgrow clothes and games and all that other stuff. Just my thoughts on, that. So let's talk about the children are the victims of the conflict. In what ways are they? Well, there's quite a bit. So one of the things we see is that the children tend to feel disloyal depending on how high conflict it is between the parents. So it's almost like if they feel that the other parent is, judging the other parent by, let's say, for instance, things like describing them as mean, unsupportive, the bad guy, they left us to go be with somebody else, any other than all that stuff. What happens is the child feels like, well, if I'm, for instance, if I'm with mommy and mommy's sharing these things and I know mommy's hurt, but I love daddy, how can I love daddy when I know he's hurting my mom? You know what I'm saying? Like they have to wrestle with that dilemma internally. I'm not saying it's easy for us. I'm just saying from a child's perspective, that is what they're wrestling with, because how can, and then when they go with dad and they're like, oh, shoot, me and dad having fun, we're good. But damn, mom said dad was the bad guy, or vice versa, because men do it too. You're not off the hook. An example of that. So what happens is the child doesn't know who they wrestle with being loyal or disloyal based on the other parents. Like you go to the parents like, oh, did you have a good time? Oh, you had a good time. Oh, and such and such, such. And so now the high that the parent had, the child had with the other parent, they're made to not feel, they feel bad about even having a good time. Therefore, being loyal enough to have a good time when the other parent feels some kind of way about it. Not cool. Not cool. You know how many times that I've had to smile and say, really? Oh, that's good. More times than I can count. It means everything to me that when she's excited and she's loving up on her father and any other experience, that I support her in that experience, regardless of how I feel about what took place with us, because that is not what it's about. It's about her. You know what I mean? Take some practice. We're 10 years into this, but practice makes it good. You get much better at it, right? I don't think you're perfect, but you get better. You just get consistent and disciplined about it, right? Abandonment concerns. Some, children feel like, oh, shoot, if they left one another, maybe they're going to leave me. Sometimes they feel like they're the reason why they are separated to begin with. They then feel like if they don't do their part in walking that tightrope that may exist, that they're going to be the existence between the co-parents or the parents' intention, then the tension in the co-parent relationship, then they're going to feel like maybe if they might be abandoned, if they are more excited about something than they are with the one parent they're living with, they may feel like, well, I can't do that, because at some point they may get upset and abandon me. And not in a physical abandonment, but like even an emotional abandonment, a social abandonment. To me, those are just is equally bad. So, think about that. Self-esteem and self-blame. Yeah. So children really fantasize about their parents getting back together and staying together. They do. Even if it was, at some point, if it was just too bad and they've seen a whole lot, they may not so much if they see you apart and they see you guys are doing good. So that's, again, nuances and context here. I can't give it all in 30 minutes. But to them, they view themselves as the center of the universe. And so when things are taking place between the co-parents and the co-parents or the parents, they view that, they take that on and internalize it as something that they did. And what happens is that blame and that self-loathing, so to speak, where they feel like they can control something that they don't, it really takes a hit at their self-esteem. You know what I mean? Um, it also, truthfully, in a lot of cases, it affects their ability to have healthy relationships when they get older too. You know what I mean? Because what they see and what they learn is this is how relationships are supposed to be. When I have conflict, I'm supposed to continue you my enemy. So we're not teaching them that through the very most important relationships in a child's life, which is that between the parent, the mother, and the parent and the father. That is where a lot of breakdown happens. You know what I mean? You know. So let me tell you, kind of as I end this, I'm gonna read to you something, and the reason why I have to read it because it's just too much for me to remember. So just bear with me. But when we as parents have to co-parent after a divorce or after a separation, this is what we're asking. This is what has to be done to do something that can seem impossible, like get along with them, to create an environment that is as conflict free as possible, to conduct the complicated logistics of of your children's lives, schedules, homework, equipment, and other activities as seamlessly as possible, to partner with someone whom with they had a romantic relationship that they feel didn't work at the fault of anybody else and it has hurt we deeply. To talk to that person regularly or communicate over some type of communication tool regularly. To make decisions with someone, this is huge, to make some decisions with someone who may differ in your values, your ethics in major areas. That's huge. And that's hard. Real hard. Not impossible, but real hard. To consider the parent as their consultant. Consult with one another. To keep each other as updated and as informed as possible, whether we deem them deserving or not. It ain't even the point. The point is you need to know what's going on with the little person that we brought into this world, period. Let you know what's going on. You decide what you want to do from that point, but I'm going to let you know the information. Absolutely necessary. To work together to create a life full that the children that allows them to grow as healthy as possible in the children and not be burdened with dealing with the aspects that adults have to in relationships. They should not be burdened with our issues or our concerns. Also, we're asking for us to denounce them as an enemy and consider them as an ally. They have to be your ally. It's a lot. I know I'm asking a lot. I promise you, there's nothing that I don't have to do myself. And so, I'll just end with this. All that I just said, that is what is in the best interest of the child. It just as simple as that. And I don't make the activity, the work, the ego sitting aside, the biting the lip, the phonies, kind of like, okay, all the names you may be thinking in your head that do not let come out your mouth. I'm not making it seem like that work is not hard as hell. But I can tell you that over time, when we put it into practice, I'm not saying you won't hit bumps, but I promise you, at some point when you don't engage and you make the communication short to the point, and there's different practices, I could do a video about that. Just simple things that are practical, because I talk about this with people. I've been talked to myself about it. I've read about it. I've learned from watching someone helping me. I have support. It can work. And all of the high conflict will cease, and it would just be severely about the children. Even if the person is mature, even if they try to continue to engage. When we learn that, I promise you, it works. And it really is better for the child. And as far as who did what or who shot John, it doesn't even matter. When they get older, they'll figure it out. I promise you, they will do that. It never fails. If they haven't figured it out, that's a whole nother story. Our job is to make sure is to do what's best, what's in the best interest of the child. So then the last question would be, and one that I've had to ask myself, what is the price that my child should have to pay for the conflict that me and her father has? What's the price? And to me, there isn't a price that you could, it's zero. So y'all let me know what you think in the comments. You know, if you want to go further into different things about what can be done and from a practicality standpoint, put it in the comments and I'll respond to it in that. It'll help me put together what I can do. I will say, lastly, you can always go to marissalexander.com and go to the section where it says join the conversation. And if you specifically want to see anything covered in that area or anything else for that matter, go ahead and put it out there. And with my team, we look at it. And then lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you, go and sign the petition for Diamonds Forward and share it. Okay. We have to get these charges dropped. So that's all I have today with you guys. Thank y'all so much for joining me. Peace out.